Welcome back to Brands Hatch after a wet Omologato Superpole for qualifying ahead of the Bike Social Sprint race here at round 6 of the championship later on this afternoon. And it rained just before the start of qualifying, and that made it really difficult for everybody. The first time everyone had been out in the wet since testing. But a front row start for BMW and FHO Racing. Josh, that was a tough session for everyone to manage and to deal with, given that you hadn't had any experience here in the wet this weekend so far. Talk us through it, because it seemed everyone took it easy to start with, and seemed to be that you had to feel your way around before those laps at the end.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. A few times this weekend we've had the rain sort of threatening, but it hasn't actually materialised. So we're kind of ready to go and maybe sneak a dry lap in at the start of qualifying and hopefully beat the rain. But the session got delayed, so then we're sort of waiting to see what the weather was going to do, and it was just sort of sprinkling, so like it's not enough to go full wets, but then it didn't stop, so it was sort of like the last minute, chuck wets in and go. Ideally we would put a full wet setting in, so change the shock and the springs and stuff. Obviously no time for that. I'm sure it was the same for everybody. So I just went on my dry bike setup more or less, just with some preload backed off and with wet tyres. And yeah, the early laps felt quite tricky. Engine brake was for the dry, so way too strong, and it kept like making the rear of the bike slide on entry. So that was, obviously something that you can learn and adapt to a little. And as the laps went on, we got a bit quicker and were able to go onto the front row. So I'm pleased with that. Given the conditions and the way the setup was, I'm sure we can adjust the bike a little bit for the race. Now we know it's fully going to be wet. So and we're starting off the front row, so perfect really to put in a good battle.
Congratulations on the front row, Josh.
Thank you.
And starting second on the grid for the Bike Social Sprint race this afternoon for Lamy OMG Racing Yamaha, it's Ryan Vickers. Ryan, yesterday you were fastest in the dry, and same as we just spoke to Josh about, it was very difficult before that start of the session. Everyone was waiting, and then the rain came just at the start. But how did you find the Yamaha in the wet conditions? Obviously yesterday you said you felt like it was almost on rails. How did you find this afternoon?
Yeah, it was really good, to be fair. I mean, Josh touched on it as well. It was all a late decision to go full wet, as it's only sprinkling with rain at the start. So it was one of them. It weren't wet, but it weren't wet enough. It was wet enough for not to go out on slicks. So we had a dry bike, and we had to back off all the settings and make the best wet bike that we could, which is never a perfect wet bike. And like you mentioned with the engine braking and stuff like that, I think we all struggled with it a little bit, but it's really nice to make the best out of a tough situation for everyone. It really weren't easy in the conditions. It's been dry all weekend. I think the track was quite slippy with all the rubber down. So yeah, we did as good a job as we needed to. We're on the front row, and it's nice to relate that, because we've been in the top 2 or 3 all weekend. So it's nice to continue that form even in these conditions, and we can have a good weekend. Whether it's wet today and dry tomorrow, we'll be somewhere near.
Congratulations on the front row, Ryan.
Thank you. Cheers.
And back on the Omologato pole position for Beer Monster Ducati, it's Tommy Bridewell. Tommy, you come into this round as championship leader, and as we've been talking about, it was difficult. We had dry sessions, and then it rained just before qualifying. But it seemed that you had a lot more in reserve than everybody else. I mean, you had a few moments that we saw on the TV, but you held it together to have such a big advantage at the end. Talk us through it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Now, bike was working good, really, to be honest. I guess a lot of experience helps that. I've had a lot of years now on the Ducati V4R. I also know Brands Hatch very well. There are so many little areas here that can catch you out. So you initially get momentum.
Like clearways?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's the trouble. You get momentum out of some corners where they've re-tarmacked, and you think, oh, the grip's amazing. And then you'll come onto the old tarmac, and that's where it catches you out. So there was a few areas that you had to be really patient, and yeah, exactly like you say, out of clearways, I, unlike the other two, obviously, I had a wet setup because my team was fully capable of doing that in the time. So yeah, my bike was working really well as I expected it to. That's what you kind of get when you're riding for the Beer Monster PBM Ducati team. That's how good they are. And I understand in these conditions you need to it's steps, So when the session's only 12 minutes long, you don't have time to go out you know, go, sideways here and a sideways there, come in, make a change. You're better off just building every lap and making the bike work how you can as a rider. So I've always known that in these conditions, and that's all I've done really. There's a lot of areas that I feel like I can improve the bike, like massive amount, but the job's done. And like I said then earlier with Eurosport, that in these conditions, it does look like it's going to be a wet afternoon, so likely to be a wet race. It's just putting yourself on the front row makes it more than just makes it a safer race. In truth, you know, when you're sort of starting third, fourth row, you kind of do get in the realms of everyone's trying to make a pass early on and then get not down to their own fault, but perhaps a slight mistake, and can easily get collected. So I think the goal will just be to get a nice, steady, clean start. And a bit like that session, the race will develop and get faster as it goes on. And that's what we need to do. So yeah, we've got a bit of work to do, but credit to the team. Thank you, as always. Another pole position is nice. And we just got to keep our feet on the ground. Like Ryan said, we've been strong as well in the dry all weekend. I've not had this absolute supreme one-lap pace as such compared to the other guys, but going on the timings, I'm still able to do my same fastest lap time 12 laps in, and it seems like the rest are all dropping off a cliff. So I think we are in a really strong position, dry and if it's going to be wet. So let's see how we fare up for later on this afternoon in the sprint race.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you.